Hey there, welcome to episode 108 of the Let's Innovate for Vegas audio program. I'm your host, Managing Director of the Innovate for Vegas Foundation, Dan Hugo. We are recording this early this time. It's about 4:30 p.m. on Monday, March 10. We'll publish this episode in the morning of the 11th, Tuesdays, the day wherein we innovate for Vegas. Let us innovate for Vegas. So the Let's Innovate for Vegas audio program title for today, Board, Seats, and More. Coincidentally, we are coming up on the end of our third year. We get to renew our list filing with the Nevada Secretary of State, which I'll mention again, so we can add board members or we can make any changes to our governance, et cetera, et cetera. So it'd be cool to add some board members. Maybe that's you. So the Innovate for Vegas Foundation is a Nevada nonprofit corporation, and it is a 501c3 public charity. We were founded in June of 2022, June 16th, in fact. We received our 501c3 determination in October, retroactive to our date of formation. We actually started rebooting the old Code for Vegas as the Code for Vegas Foundation at the beginning of 2022. We filed to be a standalone nonprofit. Then we changed our name to Innovate for Vegas Foundation to be more inclusive of people who are not coders. We are a 100% volunteer organization, so as I will mention also again, our policies are not really policies, they're really aims at being inclusive and diverse when it comes to skill sets, interests, backgrounds, languages, etc. Since we are focused on community elevation, we need to have people from the community. So I am not a coder is not even something to think about. Being part of community elevation is. What else? We were initially it was Code for Vegas. Like I said, we renamed as Innovate for Vegas. We have been a standalone organization, not a fiscally sponsored entity from some other party, etc. the whole time since our reboot in 2022. And so our board members, also volunteers, which I will also mention again, can help us steer into the future. Hopefully wherever you found this audio program, you're able to locate the episode description, which contains the show notes, including a summary of today's episode, which I will read to you, and a few relevant links. So let's begin. Our fiscal year ends on 30 June each year, and at the same time we file our annual list update with the Nevada Secretary of State so that we can tell them who is governing our nonprofit corporation. The more the merrier, as some might say, so let us discuss growing our board of directors and a few other things. The links for today's episode are as they have been, the standard 4. Any other links would be relevant to a conversation if you want to join our board. We can point to documents about requirements to be on a board here in Nevada. They are very few. Residency and whatnot are not required. The links then, Innovate for Vegas Foundation homepage, innovate4vegas.org. This is our homepage. It's fairly basic, has the information you're looking for. Innovate FOR Vegas, no punctuation, and then a period, and then org. projectact.info, project-act.info, the hyphen, sometimes called a dash, but technically it's the hyphen. The dash key next to your 0 key on your keyboard, probably. That is our Autonomous Cohort Transformation Initiative, which then became our Autonomous Cohort Tessellation Initiative, which I will talk about later in the episode. agileforvolunteers.org, agile, F-O-R, volunteers, no punctuation, and then a period, and then org. That is, I'll talk about this more later in the episode, but it's our agile methodology adapted for non-software and non-full-time workers, volunteers. So we'll touch on that more later, but that's the homepage for that. I mentioned last week that Project Act and Agile for Volunteers would be getting a website makeover. The Agile for Volunteers makeover is almost ready. I designed a sort of a version 0 logo, and it has the basic info. The content was already there. It's just ugly. So eventually, I wear a lot of hats. So and then Project Act will follow along. These are not necessarily stylistically attractive, but they'll be more legible and mobile friendly and so on. So transitional. All websites are always a work in progress. So agileforvolunteers.org, similar deal. And then mastodon.vegas will be a Mastodon server deployment. It's not on the first page of the to-do list just yet, but it does figure into some of the other things we're working on, which I will also mention later in the episode. So while all 4 of these links are normal links that I publish each week, these are all specifically related to the topic this week. So they're sort of dual role, 2 for the price of 1. Let's get started. So would you care to take a seat? At present, we have 3 board members, including myself. You can visit our homepage, which I just mentioned, innovateforvegas.org, and see our present board members, their the makeup of our board. You can visit their LinkedIn profiles and their GitHub profiles for Mary and Sean. They are both located in Northern California. Mary has been a part of Code for America in one way or another for a while. Sean is working on some educational efforts, and his organization recently received their 501c3 status, Innovate for California. And I am at present a board member of Innovate for California, while they are reciprocal board members for Innovate for Vegas Foundation. They are located in Northern California, Sacramento and Madera. I am located here in Vegas, of course. They probably picked up on that if you've heard any other episodes of this program. If you have an active interest in nonprofit governance, telling our story perhaps, and if you like participating in our initiatives in some way, this might be a nice thing to consider joining our board. As yet, we have not needed much in the way of fundraising, but that will kind of become important in the near term. As we complete our 3rd year of our 1023EZ filing, as you may know, that means there's a $50,000 per year gross receipts cap. That would have been funny if we even came within 1%. I'm sorry, 99% of that. Yeah, about 99, 98, somewhere in there. We've not been driving donations. We've not been requesting donations. We're not really, we don't really need much in the way of funding. Most of our fees and maintenance and so on for our organization comes down to filing fees, about $50 for the state, and domain renewals. So innovateforvegas.org, got to renew that every year. Codeforvegas.org. We maintain that just so we can be found from any legacy contacts. And then we do get a lot of free stuff. So from Google, GitHub, Canva, others, discount fees on Stripe, credit card, etc. So our expenses have been very low. But as we enter our 3rd year, and if everything goes to sort of plan, it might make sense to start offering some value to the public, and they can participate financially in our endeavors at community elevation. Our bylaws are fairly standard, and yes, we really need to post those to our GitHub org so that they're visible not only to the GitHub user, but on our homepage. So they're presently stored in a Google workspace as a Google document, which we went over during a board meeting or 2 some time ago. So useful as a shared, like a live shared document, so we could edit asynchronously or during the board meeting itself. We have all that for free, as I mentioned. So we have free Google Workspace for nonprofits, Google for nonprofits, which is a misnomer. They are only Google for 501c3 public charities, or 501c3 charities, not all nonprofits. And GitHub for nonprofits, which has officially launched, but we've been enjoying for the duration. So I guess we were early in on the program. So we have free GitHub teams. We have a nonprofit tier of Canva, so I can create our cover art for this audio program. And we have a few other things that are discounted or free. I mentioned Stripe, so we get the nonprofit charity credit card processing rate, which is a slightly reduced percentage. And there's a couple other things. The only real requirement, if you are interested in being a part of our board, is that you're of legal age, so 18 or older. Residence is not required, and then you can glance at the bylaws, which I will endeavor to publish, but I can certainly make them available at any time. And you could also probably come to one of our open office hour meetings. They're open to the public, usually every Thursday at 6 p.m. Pacific time. Pacific Daylight Time now, I guess. And we have a calendar posted on the homepage of our website. So if you visit innovateforvegas.org, the gatherings calendar includes those. I will point out, if you're listening to this in March of 2025, we have a reduced recurrence schedule until the beginning of April, say. So for the duration of March, I think we have, every other week office hours, so every other Thursday instead of every Thursday. But then in April, we will resume weekly office hours. So you can stop by. We can talk about civic volunteerism, nonprofits, etc. So do come by if you're interested. What are we up to? What would you be involving yourself in? Why might you want to join our board as a director? That's a great question. The answer has a simple version, which I kind of already hinted at. And there's a more nuanced answer that starts with your own feeling about civic volunteerism and community elevation, especially because it's completely volunteer. We focus specifically on innovation regardless of the amount of tech. That is, not everything is code. Not everything is an app. Not everyone who wants to volunteer their time, effort, and expertise for all this stuff for the greater good is a coder. We also focus on attribution so that everyone who does participate in our initiatives gets credit and recognition. This sounds simple, but believe it or not, this is not so common. We can talk more about that if you are curious, but we are all about giving credit where credit is due. We do not have policies per se, since we are a 100% volunteer organization, which means our board members are not compensated. Keep that in mind, myself included. We are all contributing our time for the greater good, gratis. We do strive for diversity and inclusivity with regard to people, production by a street, with regard to people who participate, since again, not everyone is a coder. So we don't have a DEI or a DEIA hiring policy because we don't hire anyone and it's not a policy. But we do try to encourage people from diverse backgrounds and be inclusive of people who are not coders, right? This was actually a problem when we launched or relaunched Code for Vegas Foundation. We would literally be asked, if I'm not a coder, so can I participate? And the answer is yes, but the suggestion in the name was that this is for code only, coding for Vegas, not other forms of contribution of these volunteer energies. So in our rename, we wanted to make it clear that we're open to all who want to contribute their time, effort, and expertise as volunteers to elevate our communities and communities elsewhere. So we also don't discourage people from other places in participating. We don't discourage them from participating in our initiatives and activities, if remotely, but that's the world we live in, so that's totally fine. And then we add accessibility when it comes to our initiatives, mostly because the internet has solved, big asterisk, accessibility with WIARIA guidelines and requirements and so on. So making tools available to people who have limited vision, limited hearing, and so on should be just a par for the course. And similarly, accessibility in mind when we look at physical world. I usually show people an actual photo of a street corner, very near where I reside here in Vegas, in the city of Las Vegas proper, that is completely compliant with ADA, Americans with Disabilities Act, requirements for a physically accessible street corner, but very clearly was not tried and tested by someone who would need those things. So designing with accessibility in mind is a kind of a part of the overall concept. It's not necessarily a policy, like I said. We do encourage these things, though, just because we're trying to encourage participation and use of what we're doing by everybody. So it's sort of implicit in what we're trying to accomplish. So we have no quotas or anything like that. If you're curious, anyone who wants to join in, come on down. I will point out we are not a school, so we really encourage people who have actually started their journey to learn a new skill or to learn any skills along the lines of just about anything, whether it's coding or otherwise. Not everything's code. That come on down and if nothing else, we're looking at developing these job skills, developing skills in general, collaborating amongst people, delivering actual usable things to our communities. So pretty neat. We're building for real people, though, so keep that in mind. We have a contributing document visible on our GitHub org. It hasn't really been published to our website, so it's just a markdown document contributing. It's on our GitHub organization homepage at the moment. So we will eventually publish some of our documentation as well to our website. So presently GitHub based, but we'll move it to our HTML website. The contributing document is rather lengthy, but it goes into all the subtleties of everything that we're doing and the way we're trying to do it to give people credit and so on. Our initiatives, and we're using Agile for Volunteers parlance here. So initiatives have multiple component projects within them. So to keep initiative and project, initiative is sort of the umbrella or the overarching notion, open transit, for example. And then the component projects include things like a mobile web application or a mobile website, the server components that capture GTFS data about a moving transit vehicle and where it is at any given moment and so on. So different projects fall within a particular initiative. We return to first principles with our primary initiatives, nailing down our own infrastructure, like our website is a visible part, and it should always be a work in progress. And we include our how-to documentation for joining and participating, and our basic tools for communications and discussions around everything from board meetings to project iteration and everything else. We have always had our board meetings in public via an open virtual meetup on Jitsi, Jitsi. Those links are in our meetup or our gatherings calendar for both the meetup initiative, which I have not mentioned, and our office hours, which I have. Jitsi is itself an open source and free video conferencing platform, unencumbered. There's no fees or anything, and you can even self-host if you like. This is the kind of thinking that we are getting behind, so no need for Zoom when there's platforms like Jitsi out there. Nearly as important, maybe tied to the primary slide tied in. So it's primary initiatives, and then these are also primary, but we need to have our own infrastructure sort of built out to really make this function. Agile for Volunteers and Project Act initiatives, as I mentioned in our link at the top, links section at the top of the episode. Now I will say that these are public initiatives. So Agile for Volunteers has its own website, its own GitHub organization. Project Act has its own website, its own GitHub organization, and is in fact fiscally sponsored by Innovate for Vegas Foundation. So it too has the free GitHub Teams tier for GitHub for nonprofits. So all the features of a nonprofit organization using GitHub tools, projectact.info is where we develop. So documentation, process, methodology, tools, and hopefully that will be a collaborative effort. Internally, we also use Agile for Volunteers for our workflow. So you can think of it as like we're trying out the stuff within our own infrastructure, but we also are making that public. So there will be some sort of like what works for everybody, what works for us. Hopefully those will meet up somewhere. And then the same goes for Project Act. So we start with our first principles in Agile. That's from the Agile Manifesto back in 2001, and adapt them to non-software and non-employee efforts. And we can, of course, use the power of collaboration to make this initiative better. So if other people adopt these notions, Agile for Volunteers, we're really focused on whole team, on user stories, on assigning tasks based on stories and features. So there's like a hierarchy of the way you describe an initiative or a component project. It's not someone go and write a specification and then nobody works on it. So it's really supposed to involve individuals as a whole team and then collaborating on what is to be accomplished and then leave how to accomplish it to one or two people at a time working on the task and so on. So it's not quite as, hopefully not as divisive as Agile has become, thanks to the Agile industrial complex. But the idea is to make the most of it, volunteer time, effort, and expertise, and not get bogged down in front-loading specifications that may or may not actually reflect reality, and letting the people who want to be volunteers actually be a part of the entire process. So they're not being told what to do. We don't have managers that are pointing at tasks and assigning them and then saying, okay, now give me a status report so I can report to my manager. That simply doesn't exist. So Agile for Volunteers is really meant for kind of a self-organizing, not necessarily flat, but also not rigidly hierarchical structure to the way people work on projects together, collaboration. And no stand-up meetings and no focus on software only. So volunteers, they're not full-time employees, so it's when time is available. We have the notion of an atomic team member, atomic teams. Atomic teams are valid, or they're guaranteed to exist, I suppose you could say, between the start and end of an iteration. Iterations are like sprints, but they don't imply running fast. So you take a period of time in an iteration and you have an atomic team that exists for that duration, and then the team goes away. So there's no commitment required, demanded, or expected in any way beyond the atomic team interval. So if you only have time to contribute for briefly now and then you want to come back next month, be on an atomic team for a week or two. And then then we have persistent teams. They are more flexible and they have time to do some of the inter-iteration maintenance and so on. So I would be considered a persistent team member because I'm kind of always around, maybe too much. Project ACT is about enabling cohorts of one or more people to not only pursue their civic volunteer goals, but to establish a discovery environment to enable and encourage connection, communication, and collaboration. This is a good time to point out that our purpose statement for the Innovate for Vegas Foundation, which I usually say at the top of the show, I was so eager to get started, is to enable and encourage ideation, innovation, and implementation to make our communities better. So these are vague. They're vaguely stated because sometimes you have to adapt. So to enable and encourage connection, communication, and collaboration between cohorts of one or more people without requiring a central authority. So if you imagine RSS feeds or maybe a Mastodon server, or just the notion of being able to locate others who are maybe working on similar projects or similar initiatives or have similar skill sets. If you need help or if you want to help someone, you have some time every week and you'd like to contribute to a project, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So Project ACT is hoping to enable that. The original Project ACT, the Autonomous Cohort Transformation, was aimed at helping other brigades from Code for America transform into autonomous cohorts so that they would be independent entities, perhaps forming their own nonprofit, becoming a separately fiscally sponsored entity, or applying for a 501c3 determination from the IRS, et cetera, et cetera. So we basically wanted to share our experiences, not returning to Code for America, but Code for America ended their brigade program, so we don't have to worry about that. But still, there might be people out there who would like to form a formal structured organization within their locality. Not legal advice, more practical experience and some references and a place to have that conversation. That's one of the reasons we have our office hours each week. So Project ACT will hopefully, the tessellation component will hopefully enable and encourage that connection, communication, and collaboration. The discovery environment can actually extend to people who are just curious, so that people who are civic volunteers contributing to their own communities and perhaps other communities can be found and recognized and celebrated for their efforts. And, I didn't even know people were working on this. So there's a whole yin and yang component to this. The people that are trying to work on things and the people who didn't even know people were working on things, they should also be able to discover each other. And then our other initiatives are designed to be locality agnostic. They are self-driven, so we are not waiting for direction from a third-party collaborator for any of our initiatives thus far. This is certainly something that we could discuss into the future with any particular collaborative third party. And all of them are intended to be ongoing for the purposes of civic volunteers joining our organization or joining our initiatives externally. The difference is subtle. We would imagine that people from other places that might want to contribute on a regular basis or be considered a part of the team may or may not wish to join formally the Innovate for Vegas Foundation. There's not really a strong requirement to do that. So participating in what we're doing is more important than formally joining something when you think about it. And all of the initiatives that we currently have on the table are potential spin-off efforts in which I've referred to these as labs projects, labs initiatives. So these are arm-length startups that convert volunteer effort into startup jobs. So people have been contributing to an open source initiative that we're working on at any given time. if we can turn that into a revenue generating or monetizable external entity, or maybe something that we can work with a third party to provide support, ongoing support on ongoing continuing development and so on. So people who have worked on the project or initiative could then become employees if they want, or some other paid arrangements. So compensation in the long tail of volunteerism. We have not yet reached this level for any initiative on deck, so there's no working example to show, but we will soon, and then we can talk more about that. It would be arm's length though, so we're not commingling directly. This would be a completely separate external entity. It would essentially make the open source initiative available for the people that were volunteers driving it to deploy it and support it in a monetizable or revenue generating or otherwise compensated arrangement. And the details of that would be worked out with the participants and, externally. So it wouldn't be a matter of board discussion. The directors would not be involved. It would be an external entity that would drive that, and so on. Technically, you could participate in that as well if you like. That we would formally adjourn our board meetings. Those discussions would be completely and totally arm's length, separate context, could be a different group of people, etc. Completely transparent, by the way. I'm a very strong proponent of that. So if you have any questions about that, come on down and we'll talk. Some other stuff. One of our capstone efforts, I use capstone to indicate the way that we would integrate our various component projects and initiatives into a larger vision. So academia uses capstone in a different way, but bear with me. A culmination of our various initiatives as they are described today is to make our smart city smarter. In this case, we're looking at the greater Vegas area first, but we are not aiming at Vegas only. So none of our initiatives are Vegas specific. In this regard, we hope to attract contributions of time, effort, and expertise from anyone interested in smart city initiatives and projects. With our approximately 40 million annual visitors to the greater Vegas area and our 2.5 million local residents in Clark County able to try these ideas out in a co-creation model, we can extend that to other places if people from other places are interested in collaboration. Pretty simple. That's why I'm saying you don't have to join Innovate for Vegas Foundation, but we can certainly collaborate with you and your cohort, which could be one or more people. Totally flexible. To this end, a return to some of the old ways of internet information sharing. I'm really a big fan of email, and I kind of think Usenet should return, network news, and NTP. Coupled with modern open protocols and methodologies like ActivityPub protocol on top of activity streams to share information, follower subscriptions, and notifications in an open and standardized way, which is enabling all manner of new ideas today as it has for years. Mastodon is getting some attention after the purchase of Twitter and its conversion or renaming to X, but it's actually been around for a while, and ActivityPub has been around even longer. LinkedIn, Twitter, and Instagram can go, my opinion. We can pursue smarter smart city efforts on top of open and standard protocols, tools, and methods, and we should, and we will, and we are. The Mastodon.Vegas starting point is one thing, deployment of an externally developed platform. So we are not contributing to Mastodon software development at the present time. Nothing prevents that. It's an open source project. Hey, let's see how that works. But which will couple with our MyMuni and Welcome initiatives, maybe our Smart Social initiative as well, through these standard protocols so that we can build into the future with all that entails. Closed platforms like LinkedIn, which tend to get a lot of attention in the Vegas area, are closed and overly insular. If you ask some people like me for their opinions on that, I will always tell you LinkedIn is not great for a variety of reasons. Not the least of which is if you're not following the right person or you're not signed in, you may be left out. That's not how the future should be working, my opinion. The future need not go deeper into closed and proprietary platforms. And so everything that we are doing is open source, open platform, open documentation, and open to collaboration from others, not in or near the greater Vegas area. As I frequently say, you do not need to innovate in Las Vegas to innovate for Las Vegas. And if you would like to be a part of what we're working on, like I said, we'd love to share what we're doing with our 40 million annual visitors who are come here for various reasons, the fun economy and other such things. So why not, when people come to Vegas, share our smart city concepts so that they can say, wow, that Vegas is pretty smart. And then when they return home to wherever they live or hang out, they could possibly see where, why don't we have this here? And who knows, there may be some civic volunteers in their own cities and we could all work together. Nothing prevents that at all. So if you're interested in any of these things and you'd like to be a part of our governance, join our board as a director, look me up. You can email me, Hugo, DHUGO at innovateforvegas.org. You can follow my LinkedIn, or not follow, but you can check out my LinkedIn profile if you're curious before. You can also do the same for our other board members. You can reach out to me that way. You can just email info@innovateforvegas.org if you have general questions, or again, if you'd like to join in our office hours every other Thursday for the remainder of this month, March, and then back to every Thursday starting in April 2025. And then you can always visit our homepage, innovateforvegas.org, and track down that gatherings calendar, which is usually has been right at the top. Features an agenda view of our upcoming. It's a shared Google calendar. We gotta do better than that. But yeah, come on down. Open to all those interested. The office hours are about civic volunteerism and forming your own cohort, or what did we do? What have we learned through the years, and so on. And then our initiative meetup, I should say, on Mondays, and again alternating Mondays until April. And this has only been since the middle of February, so we're just taking a little recurrence break, and then back to normal come April 2025. Our initiative meetup is more about people who are currently or who would like to participate in our initiatives and component projects. And those could be broken out to initiative or iteration level discussions and so on. So fairly flexible, making the most of our virtual engagement so that we don't have to try to find a room and a time that works for everyone. Yes, a time that works for everyone now, but these are always adjustable, and nothing prevents special meetings for special times at special places for special people. Okay, I'll let that one go. Not everything is hilarious. On that note, I will thank you for listening. Kept it brief once again. My 1 hour plus episodes have been less frequent of late. I'm sure you're happy. My voice is happy. The weather is changing here in Vegas, so it always impacts my everything. Everything from the shoulders up gets whipped around with our wind and weather changes and humidity and so forth. So on that note, I thank you for putting up with my voice. I thank my voice for making it through this. I have 36 minutes here. I'll trim the silence, probably closer to 30 minutes. And once again, do visit our homepage, innovateforvegas.org, the gatherings calendar, if you have any interest in participating in discussions, and then dhugo@innovateforvegas.org or info@innovateforvegas.org generally. And there you go. Thank you so much. Take care. Maybe we'll see you around. Bye-bye.